Hello everyone, this is Yuri, and today I'm going to show you how to blend materials properly in Blender using height maps. And we're going to build some additional functionality, like not just blending those, but having some controls, like offset, and we can actually control it with the texture and paint this texture if we need. And we can actually control softness, because by default this transition is going to be really sharp, and that's not ideal. I mean, that's too much, but, well, we can control it. So let's begin. I'm going to start with a new scene, and I'm going to change a layout here. I am mostly going to work in shader editor, and the 3D view I'm going to put here, and we need a plane to actually see what we are doing. Okay, let's create a material, not that one, something more simple for now, like diffuse, and I'm going to use two height maps, pretty simple ones, not like those that I showed you in the intro, because those are, well, not very obvious what's happening there. So I'm going to use something really simple, and then we're going to switch to some megascans or whatever. Okay, I got them. So one of them is this circles, and another one is squares. And let's start really simple. The easiest way of blending two height maps is just deciding which one of those is higher. So let me show you an example of what I'm trying to do. Those are just simple displacements, just so I could illustrate what I'm thinking about here. So I want to blend those materials like so that they would intersect naturally. And in order to do that, I just pick whichever is higher. So in order to do that, there's a math function called maximum. It will do just that. It will choose values that are higher. Okay, that's my blended height map, but I want to blend two materials, like orange and blue. So I want to mix those. And I need a mask. So how do I get a mask? Again, in the math node, there is this less than and greater than. It gives you white if one input is greater than another and black otherwise. So if we check it out, it's a mask. And we can invert it, choosing either greater than or less than. So this is a mask between our materials. Yep. And I need to add displacement. So this thing is our new displacement. We put it into height, we choose some decent scale, and done. Let's render the thing, I guess. Oh, I forgot to enable settings. Yeah, displacement and bump. Yep, and it works. But this way, I mean, yeah, it totally works, but first of all, we cannot control this in any way. I mean, if one is higher, then it's on top. That's it. Another thing, there's no way for us to control the blending. Let's start fixing those things one at a time. Let's switch back to preview. And, well, there's an easy way and a good way. And the easy way to control this blend is just to add a value to a texture. I mean, those things, those nodes, they compare which of those is higher. So if I add value, well, the comparison will become different. So let's add a math. Yep, and it works. You can move those around. And this is a pretty decent solution, but there's a catch. It actually changes the displacement, not only the blending. And well, it's a good thing, but if you start mixing more and more layers of displacement, eventually it can offset too much and it's hard to control. So the better solution is going to be lowering one texture or the other and keep them like in the same initial range from like 0 to 1 or whatever, and not like moving the whole thing around. So I will remove this and I will try to explain what I mean. So what I'm trying to achieve here is a slider that at 0.5 will make this blend like default. But when I raise the value, it will lower one of the textures. And if I lower the value below 0.5, it will lower the other texture. And that's kind of it. And our range will stay the same all the time. So first of all, I need a slider. Let's add a value. It defaults at 0.5. Let's call it offset. So whenever this goes up, I want to subtract something from one of the textures. Okay. Let's start with mapping a range, because as I said, there are two cases here. One is from 0.5 to 1, and another is from 0 to 0.5. Okay. And now I want to subtract, because, well, moving down is just like subtracting the height value. So let's add a math. Subtract. Well, something. And let's do the same thing here. Okay. And one of those gotta be inverted. Let's see. Yep. It does exactly what I want it to do. So let me explain a little what's happening here. So when I move this slider from 0.5 to 1. It subtracts values from 0 to 1. So when the slider is at 1, I subtract 1, and well, I get nothing here. And here exactly the opposite thing happens. When I move the slider from 0.5 to 0, I subtract 1, and at 0.5 I subtract 0. And it just works. Okay. First part done. Now, the blending. I mean, making those transitions smooth. And this one is a little tricky. So, what is the problem here? What I want to have here is some sort of a gradient that I can remap. And I want this gradient to start exactly at those intersections. And I want it to go in and out. And the problem is that currently, if I check out my height, the values on these intersections are all different. Well, if I look at the render, let's have it like that. I can see that those intersections are at different heights. And I want them to be at the same height. And the way I can do that is by subtracting from the mix one of the textures. Like if I subtract those spheres or circles, whatever, everywhere where they are, the value is going to be 0 because, well, I'm subtracting spheres from spheres. And on squares, there's going to be something. I mean, spheres are lower than squares, so squares won't be like deleted, but they'll have some values, some gradients, hopefully. So let's do that and see how it looks. Let me switch to material preview. And where is my mix? Okay, I don't need this mask for now. Yeah, that's my texture. Let's move this aside. Okay, so let's use math and let's subtract from this result the original texture. And I'm not using this node because, well, I did some offsetting already, so I want the offsetted value. Let's put it here and let's see how it looks. Well, it looks kind of weird. Let's render it. But it does the job. The whole intersection area is just pressed to 0. And everything else, well, it's weird, but it's gonna work. If I try to remap it, or I don't use some gradient map, color, I don't know, converter, color ramp, it's the same thing. I prefer map range when I'm not dealing with color. So if I start to raising contrast, yeah, I can actually make some masks and I can control their like smoothness. But now I have a gradient that goes like in one direction, because this is the intersection line and I smashed all the circles. So I have an edge and then a gradient that goes inwards into cubes. And I want it to be like spreading evenly in both directions from this intersection line. So I have to do the same thing once again, but with squares. Yeah, and now I got the opposite picture. And now I need a way to combine those, because now those are, well, they're opposite, and if I try to combine those like in some well, obvious way, this is not going to be what I want, because I want to have like the same situation as I had in the beginning when I mixed those, but like twisted so that the intersection line is flat, like at 0.5. So what I need to do here is, first of all, remap those. Okay, one of those I want to invert, first of all. Is there an invert? Oh no, it's a color invert. I don't want to deal with color. I want a math subtract. It's going to be 1 minus. Yep, that's an invert. Yes. And now I want to map those. Like, one of those textures is going to be from 0 to 0.5, and another is going to be from 0.5 to 1. They will create this continuous surface. So I need a map range node. So that's the lower one. And it goes from, well, we take values from 0 to 1, and we map it from 0 to 0.5, so it's the bottom part of our texture. And here I do the same thing, but I map from 0.5 to 1. Okay, and now I need to mix those. And I need to mix those right on the intersection line. And I can get this mask by just using greater than. Okay, Shift D. Or less than. I'm not really sure. Well, whatever, those are the same things. Okay, now that's our mask, and I can blend those two things. Mix RGB. And here's our mask. Let's see. Oh, wrong direction. Greater than. Yep. Now I have what I need. And now if I color correct this thing and contrast it, I can just tweak the width of this line. Well, let's check out how it looks in a render. I'm just curious. Well, yeah, pretty weird. But as you can see, there is this flat area across the whole thing. And now I can actually do some contrasting with this using map range again. Let's do that, put it here. So I'm going from, I'm going to 0 to 1 is going to be a black and white mask, but I want to control a range. Like 0.5 is the center, so I have to like move either greater or lower from that center, but evenly. Let's say 0.45 and 0.55. So we have a width of 0.1. That's pretty large. Let's have 0.49 and 0.51. Yeah, it's nicer. But in this particular example with those squares and circles, it looks kind of weird, but when we apply it to a real texture, it will look great. But I don't want to control this like I do now, like putting values for minimum and maximum. It's not, well, comfortable to use. I want a single value that will control the spread. So let's have a value. Let's call it softness. And that's my base value. Yeah. And I need another value, which is going to be our baseline. Well, actually 0.5. Just 0.5. And I'm going to add something to my base value. Let's have a little tiny value. And I want to subtract the same amount, from the baseline. Yep, subtract. So my add goes to from max, and my subtract goes to from min. Now I can control this slider. There's a little problem with that though. When I go below 0, it flips out. So I want to clamp it. And I can actually do that when I add controls to the node. But I want to do it here, just safer. And I want to do it with clamp. So let's add a dot. It's a shift right mouse button to do that. And I want to clamp values. So we're going from not 0, but like a very tiny value to 1. So now if I change softness beyond 0 or 1, it'll just work fine. Yeah, let's leave it at 0.1. Now, I need to reconstruct my displacement, because what I have now is far from it. And I cannot use my maximum node to create this mix, because, well, this is like the default result, and I want the same thing but with a blend. So that is our mask, and we can blend heights using it. Let's move those things aside. Let's create color mix. It's mix RGB, sorry. Yep, mix RGB. Use that as a mask. And yeah, that's our weighted displacements. So let's connect those into the mix. It's a little bit uncomfortable. Let's see. Yeah, it looks kinda like what I expect. Let's try to change softness. Well, something happens. I guess it's good. Saving is a good idea. Well, let's try it out. I eventually have those two outputs. This one is my resulting height, and this one is a mask that I can use to blend materials. Okay, let's take those, connect the mask, and let's connect this height into displacement. Yeah, it works. You can see here we have this like fine transition. And again, this particular example is not like very good because it creates those weird cutaways, but I'm gonna do it now with a proper material and it will look just fine. But first I want to put this whole thing into a node. So what do I need here? I certainly need two inputs for height maps. Let's stop the rendering. What else? I need an offset. And I need this softness thing. And I'm going to have two outputs. This height and this mask. And I want height to be black and white. RGB to black and white. Yep, that's it. Okay, now I can take all of those nodes and hit Control G. Oh, by the way, do I have this group? No, I don't. Okay, good. So I can create it once again. Let's remove those dots. Let's edit the interface. Ooh, maybe I shouldn't have removed those dots because now I can't really tell where everything is. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the heights. Okay, let's name those things. This one is the offset, I believe. It's kinda... Oh, this one is the offset. Right. This one is softness. And those are height 01 and height 0.02. Now our outputs. This value, that one is our output height, and this result is our mask. Okay, let's see if it works. Let's call it height blend. Oh, I can actually check if those are right, just like that. Yeah, offset goes to offset, softness goes to softness. Oh, by the way, defaults and limits. Offset by default is 0.5, goes from 0 to 1, okay. And softness by default is 0. And it's fine because, well, I clamp it somewhere, yeah, here. Now I don't really need those. Yep, now, yeah, I have a softness node, control, and I have, come on, go to 0, what's wrong with you? And I have an offset. Nice. Now, let's try it out on some actual textures. Okay, I have two materials here. Those are megascans, and those are free, so you can download them and try it yourself. So one is the moss material, and another one is some bricks. Well, you can see it. Now let's use our node. Let's disconnect everything. I'm going to need a displacement node. And I'm going to need a mix node. Mix shader. And you can actually build this into your node, but I don't really want to do that. So let's create our group height blend. Let's connect our heights. Height 1, height 2, those are displacements. And we have our height, and we have our mask. And let's connect the shaders, and it should work. If I didn't mix up the direction, it seems I did. The order. Yep, now it works. And if I were to render it, again, I forgot to tell it to use height, and now it works. Great. Let's try to move some sliders. So here's our offset, and it is pretty sensitive because the actual range of those textures is not from like 0 to 1, but somewhere like grayish. Let's set it back, and we can make those transitions a little softer like that. We don't need a lot of softness here, just so that it's not like razor sharp transition. It has to be somewhat smooth, but not like, I don't know. not like that. Though, I mean, why not? Maybe that's what you're going for. I think 0.01 is pretty good. And one last thing, I want to control this with some sort of texture. The easiest one to use here is just a gradient, but you can texture paint those. So let's create a gradient. Okay, gradient texture. And if I connect it, yeah, it's going to be a little too harsh. Like this range is pretty small, and I want this gradient to go like from one side to the other side. And that happens because this texture is actually going from 0 to 1, and as I said before, this height does not, like the original heights, they're pretty low contrast. So let's find the effective range of those textures. Let's slide the offset slowly. Yeah, and I can see that around 0.4 everything disappears. Let's try 0.6. Yeah, at 0.6 everything is green, so our effective range is very low. So let's map range again. Okay, offset. Here's our gradient. Come on. Okay, so yes, I want to go from 0 to 1 because my input texture goes from 0 to 1, but I want to compress this result or stretch. I don't know. Well, I want it to go from 0.4 to 0.6. And now it spreads more or you can just control it with sliders, or you can connect texture here and go to texture paint and start painting. One thing about painting I should mention: when you paint, it will perfectly work as a preview in this material preview mode, but when you render, it will not. You have to save the texture, because when it renders, it takes it not from cache but from the actual file on the disk. And well, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. If you have some questions or comments or any requests what you want me to talk about, well, leave a comment.